Buddy, it's the Cartoonkid back again with another fantastic fanfic idea. And today I'm bringing you Moxxie and The Mask. Now, you're probably wondering, why did I come up with this? Well, to be fair, yeah, Moxxie is quite honestly one of the few people I could see wearing the mask. Meek, lacks self-confidence, and all that stuff. And considering the fact that this is the month of the mask anniversary, I figured why not? Speaking of which, for the remainder of this month, if not a bit after, and maybe a bit after, I am going to be doing a whole series of mask related stories. The mask related stories. But anywho, story. In the grim underbelly of Edge City's financial district, the first bank of greed, it stood like a monument to corporate misery. Behind the bulletproof glass of teller window 3, Moxxie, no last name, counted bills with the mechanical precision of the perpetual defeated. The perpetually defeated. His small home was barely clear. The participation as he hunched over his work, wincing every time a customer barked orders at him. The other work teller snickered as Moxxie fumbled with the cash drawer, his hands trembling slightly under the scrutiny. Even the human customers seemed to sense his weakness, treating him like a servant rather than a professional. Only Charlie Schumacher, a fellow imp working the adjacent window, offered any kindness, sliding encouraging notes across the counter during busy periods and covering for Moxxie's frequent mistakes. Across town, in the neon-drenched shadow of the Coco Bongo nightclub, a different kind of predator stalked his prey. Dorian Tyrell, a shark demon with dead eyes and a designer suit, plotted against his boss Nico, a massive rhinoceros demon whose paranoia is matched only by his brutality. Tyrell's plan required inside information, and for that he needed his most valuable asset. Millie Colley sashayed into the First National Bank like liquid fire poured into a funeral parlor. Her crimson skin caught the harsh fluorescent lights, and her confident stride turned every head in the building. She wasn't just beautiful, she was dangerous. a weapon wrapped in silk and armed with a smile that could melt steel. At Tellerwindow 3, Moxxie's world tilted on its axis. When Millie approached his station, her presence seemed to transform the sterile bank into something alive and electric. She leaned across, she leaned across the counter, her eyes mixing with her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart stutter. As she conducted her business, ostensibly opening a simple checking account, her gaze swept the bank's layout with professional precision. For a few precious minutes, Moxie felt seen. Millie listened to his nervous small talk, laughed at his awkward jokes, and touched his hand when he passed her the paperwork. When she left, she glanced back once, and Moxie's chest swelled with hope he hadn't felt in years. That evening, Moxie stood in line outside the Coco Bongo. His best friend, a pathetic thread, his best shirt, a pathetic threadbare thing, and tucked nervously into his pants. The bouncer, a massive hellhound with arms like tree trunks, looked at him, looked him up and down with unconcealed disgust before shaking his head. No amount of pleading or explanation could change the verdict. Moxie didn't belong. His car, his ancient borrowed car, a rust bucket that Charlie had warned him was on his last leg, Hicks chose that moment to die completely. Steam poured from under the hood as the engine made a death rattle that echoed across the harbor bridge. Moxie sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, feeling the weight of every humiliation he ever endured. That's when he saw the figure in the water. Without thinking, Moxie dove from the bridge, his natural agility carrying him safely to the murky harbor below. But instead of a drowning victim, he found only garbage and debris. Among the refuse, his fingers closed around something smooth and ancient. A wooden mask carved with intricate Nordic runes. Its sun was gleaming desperate, the filth despite the filth surrounding it. Back in his cramped apartment, Moxie sat on his threadbare couch, turning the mask over in his hands. The wood seemed to pulse with warmth, and the carved features appeared to shift in the dim light. Against every instinct screaming at him to leave it alone, he lifted the mask to his face. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. Green energy coursed through his body as his small frame expanded and twisted into something magnificent and terrible. His horns grew longer and more pronounced. His eyes blazed with otherworldly fire, and his voice dropped to a confident purr that commanded attention. He was no longer Moxxie the bank teller. He was the Mask, a creature of pure id and unlimited power. The green-faced trickster burst from the apartment like a force of nature. His first stop was the mechanic shop that sold him the lemon of a car. With a gesture, he transformed their tools into snakes and their floor into quicksand, leaving them trapped and terrified as he danced away whistling a jaunty tune. Next came Agnes Peeman, his shrewdest landlady who delighted in making his life miserable. The Mask paid her a visit, turning her apartment into a house of horrors where the walls oozed green slime and her furniture came alive to chase her around the room. She would think twice before demanding late fees from anyone again. The next morning, Moxie returned to work with a spring in his step that confused his co-workers. Detective Lieutenant Mitch Kellaway, a grizzled human cop with a permanent scowl, was interviewing bank employees from the previous night's incidents. Beside him stood Peggy Brandt, a sharp-eyed reporter whose notebook was filled with questions about the mysterious green-faced figure terrorizing the city. But Moxie's attention was focused on other matters. He needed money, real money, and she returned to the Coco Bongo and seen Millie perform. When night fell, the Mask returned to the bank he knew so well, dancing through the security systems like they were choreographed obstacles in a musical number. The timing was perfect in the worst possible way. Tyrell's crew had chosen the same night for the robbery, and they arrived to find their carefully planned heist in chaos. The Mask had already cleaned out the vault, leaving behind only a thank you note signed with a lipstick kiss. Tyrell, who watched from his car as his operation crumbled, his dead eyes burning with rage. At the Coco Bongo, the Max made an entrance that would be talked about for years. He materialized on stage in a whirlwind of green smoke, his movements following like liquid mercury as he swept Millie into a dance that defied physics and logic. They spun through the air, and the bodies moving in perfect harmony, while the crowd watched in stunned silence. When their lips met, the world seemed to stop for both of them. It was a moment of pure connection. The Mac, the Mask's exuberant confidence meeting Millie's fierce independence, but the magic was broken when Tyrell appeared, his face twisted with fury as he confronted the being who had cost him everything. The mask fled through the club's emergency exit, but not before a piece of his vibrant suit caught on a piece of broken glass. By morning, it had reverted into a scrap of Moxie's pajamas, a clue that would lead Detective Kellaway straight to window 3 of the First National Bank. National Bank. Dr. Arthur Newman's office was filled with books about mythology and psychology, the perfect setting for Moxie's desperate conclusions. The elderly psychiatrist listened intensely as Moxie, speaking in carefully vague terms, described his dreams of transformation and power. Newman's diagnosis was both fascinating and terrifying. The mask was likely an artifact of Loki, the Norse trickster god, and it amplified the wearer's repressed desires into reality. That night, the mask met Millie in the harbor park, away from the prying eyes of the Coco Bongo. She had sought him out, drawn by the same magnetic pull that had connected them on the dance floor. They walked together under the stars, and for a moment the dangerous game they were both playing seemed irrelevant. But Detective Kellaway had set a trap. Police sirens wailed as squad cars surrounded the park, their spotlights cutting through the darkness. The mask responded with theatrical flair, summoning a mariachi band from thin air and leading them in a rousing performance that distracted the officers long enough for his escape. Peggy Brandt had been waiting, had been watching from the shadows, her reporter instincts telling her that the story of the century was within her grasp. When Tyrell approached her with an offer, $50,000 for information leading to the mass capture, she couldn't resist. Her betrayal was swift and efficient, leading Tyrell's men straight to Moxie's apartment. The ambush was brutal. Tyrell's groom sweet Moxie senseless before the boss arrived. His shark-like grin promising worse things to come. When Tyrell donned the mask, his transformation was a nightmare mirror of Moxie's experience. For the mask had been mischievous and theatrical, Tyrell became a creature of pure malevolence. His bulk increasing dramatically as dark energy coursed through his body. The corrupted mask wearer forced Moxie to reveal the location of the stolen money before turning him over to the police. As Moxie was dragged away in handcuffs, Tyrell planted a cheap rubber mask in his apartment, evidence that would convince the authorities they had caught the real culprit. In his holding cell, Moxie felt more powerless than ever. The brief taste of confidence and strength had made his normal weakness even more unbearable. When Millie visited him, slipping past the guard with the same skills he used to case the bank, her touch on his face was gentle and full of regret. She, she revealed the truth about her mission, how she had been sent to gather intelligence for the robbery, how she'd expected to find just another mark to manipulate. But Moxie's genuine kindness had caught her off guard, and now she found herself caring for the small imp in ways that complicated everything. The moment was interrupted by chaos from the main police station. Milo, Moxie's faithful hellhound companion, had somehow managed to slip past security and retrieve the cell keys from the distracted guard. The clever dog had recognized that his master was in danger and had come to the rescue. The Coco Bongos Charity Ball was the social event of the year, attended by the Edge City's elite and hosted by the unsuspecting Nico. Tyrell arrived in his grotesque mask form. His plan simple and devastating. Kill the boss, destroy the club, and frame the mask for the carnage. The time bomb he planted would reduce the building to rubble, taking the city's power structure with it. Moxie burst through the police cordon with Detective Calloway as unwilling hostage, his desperation giving him courage he'd never possess. Inside the club, he'd found Charlie trying to help evacuate the guests, but it was too late. Tyrell had already murdered Nico and was preparing for the final act of his revenge. The confrontation was brief but decisive. Millie, thinking quickly, exploited Tyrell's arrogance by challenging his manhood and convincing him to remove the mask to prove his natural superiority. The ancient artifact fell to the floor, and in the chaos that followed, Milo, ever the opportunist, managed to slip the mask over his own muzzle. The sight of a hellhound wielding the power of Loki was both terrifying and hilarious. Milo bounded through the club with canine enthusiasm, his new abilities manifesting in wonderfully absurd ways. Tyrell's remaining henchmen found themselves transformed into screeching toys and fire hydrants while the explosive device ticked down to zero. Moxie managed to wrench the mask from his loyal pet and don it one final time. The mask's return was greeted with cheers from the trapped guests as he set about defusing the bomb with the casual ease of a cartoon character. The explosive device was transformed into a giant firecracker that shot harmlessly into the sky, and Tyrell found himself sucked down the drain of the club's ornamental fountain like bathwater. When the police Arrived, they found a scene of miraculous salvation. The mayor, grateful to be alive, declared Moxxie a hero and ordered Detective Calloway to release him immediately. Tyrell's surviving henchmen were arrested, and the case of the mysterious mask was officially closed. The next morning found Moxxie, Millie, Charlie, and Milo standing on the harbor bridge where it all began. The mask felt heavier in Moxxie's hands, its power both tempting and terrifying. He understood now that true confidence couldn't come from magical artifacts. It had to be earned through facing one's fears and accepting oneself. Millie took the mask from his hands and hurled it into the harbor's depths. As it sank beneath the murky waters, she turned to face the imp who had shown her what kindness looked like. The kiss was soft and real, unmarked by supernatural power or otherworldly influence. Charlie, ever the opportunist, made a move to retrieve the mask from the water, but Milo was faster. The hellhound dove into the harbor and swam away with the artifact, perhaps understanding better than anyone that some power was too dangerous to be left in mortal hands. As the group walked towards the city, Moxxie felt something he'd never experienced before. Genuine contentment. He was still small, still nervous, still prone to stumbling over his words, but he was also brave enough to save a city, be kind enough to win a dangerous woman's heart, and strong enough to give up ultimate power when it mattered most. The mask was gone, but the man who had worn it remained. And that, perhaps, was the greatest transformation of all. And yeah, that is essentially my best interpretation of a hell of a boss version of The Mask. Anyway, a happy The Mask anniversary, and if you kind of like this idea and want to use it, maybe improve it a little bit, all I simply ask is credit for the idea. Okay, bye!